Okay, so we should be fine now. Just check. Strange colors. Everybody can see and hear everything. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move on. Uh, so the last lecture was about agent communication. It was more from a practical point of view. So we were discussing basically agent designed elements that should allow them to share tasks and results. And we were discussing the most popular um, contract net protocol, and then the Blackboard system as two very common and most popular um, means how agents communicate the tasks. And then so we also saw some practical examples, but then we started to talk about how actually what's the motivation for agents to cooperate. And there are basically two things, right? One is that the agent is considered to be having its own agenda. So basically, the agent is selfish and he's maximizing, or she, it expected utility, right? And so if you have a bunch of those selfish agents, how to force them to uh, do something together, right? So this is actually the area where we will be discussing today, and it goes to the game theory, and because the game theory is exactly concerned with the so-called games interactions of two the so-called rational agents, and they are also maximizing their own utility. So we will be discussing some typical examples of these dilemmas of agents, like when the cooperation arises, when not, and what are actually the measures for us to to measure the level of cooperation, how to force the agents to cooperate. Is it actually good to cooperate? Sometimes it's probably good to compete, and but the competition should be somehow formalized. So, so the program for the for the next couple talks is that we will be discussing some game theory. The basics of game theory you probably already know, so I will just try to briefly recap the basics and point out what's important for the field of multi-agent systems. Uh, then we will be discussing actually within the game theory, we will be discussing what's theoretically known, what's good for rational or selfish agents. And this is usually called a Nash equilibria, right? These are the theoretical properties of strategies of agents, and we will see that Nash equilibrium is like the foolproof strategy of an agent to participate in such a game. So that's the classical Nash equilibria, classical results about different games. But we can also take a look at the uh, optimization of utilities of different agents. And then if you have at least two agents, you actually can see the problem as like a multi-objective optimization. multi-objective optimization. Each agent wants to optimize, but we are looking for solutions where it's sort of optimal for both or all of the agents involved. And so Nash equilibria is one point, and the multi-objective formulation of the problem actually is telling us that we should observe the so-called Pareto optimality, which is a classical notion from multi-objective optimization. So we will be slightly discussing the Pareto fronts and optimality in terms of looking for a common optimum for two agents, where each of these agents is actually optimizing its own expected utility. Another point of view we already mentioned is something like observing the system as a whole. So these two things, the optimal strategies of rational agents and Nash equilibria of optimal strategies, or the Pareto optimality, they are from the point of view of an agent, right? Or these two agents and what agents should do. But we can actually take a look at sort of the point of view of a multi-agent system. And the point of view of multi-agent system is actually, okay, so we can compute the overall performance of the whole system. So we basically sum up all the utilities of all the agents that are involved, just summing them up during the when they performing the task, and that's what actually should be the ultimate goal. How does the system perform as a whole? And so the sum of utilities of agents is sometimes called a social welfare. Right? So before we go into some technical details, I would love you to understand that we basically have three different ways how to look at the performance of okay, I see that your notes and questions are coming. So Gabriela loves the social welfare name. Well, we will see. Actually, this field is situated in the overlapping area of mathematics, computer science, artificial intelligence, but also economics, psychology, politics. So actually, we have very different funny names and concepts because lots of economists, they see basically the how people interact in terms of money and jobs as a sort of a game theory. Also politicians, and so we'll have more funny names. The social welfare is one of them. You have tragedy of commons, for example, and so on and so on. So this area is actually very interesting, and so the historical overview is also interesting because you probably know the John Nash, right? The famous mathematician, the sort of a prodigy who in Princeton during his studies, like a master, and then the whole concept of Nash equilibria was, I think, his PhD dissertation. So he was. I don't remember the exact name of the movie that actually portrayed his life. Something about a beautiful mind or something. He was played by Russell Crowe. That I remember, but I definitely recommend the movie. It's one of the better ones. The one about Alan Turing with Benedict Cumberbatch is also quite okay. The Imitation Game, it's okay, but this movie about John Nash is surprising. For me, it was when I saw it for the first time. So yeah, I definitely recommend. Um, yeah, I'm not well prepared today. I don't remember the name of the movie. Can somebody like Gabriella Google the movie about John Nash with Russell Crowe? Uh, so yeah, Robert like the yeah Turing movie. Yeah, yeah. It's I think that actually the Cumberbatch is a good actor for this, and I mean all those people like Turing or Nash, they uh, they deserve to have a movie about them because their life was wow, really an adventure and a story, and in both cases, actually quite a tragic one, right? We all know the Alan Turing sad ending, either a suicide or sort of forced suicide by a depression caused by basically a oppression of a society, right? The with John Nash, he had his own demons. uh, he basically disappeared for many years from research, fighting his psychological disorders, uh, and then he came actually back to Princeton to be a faculty staff. The but nobody knew about him from sort of a general public. He was considered the figure who was really important in the 50s, and then nothing. And so the sort of dark, funny story is that he actually died only a couple years ago. He was quite old, and he died in a car accident. They were taking a taxi with his wife, and they refused to use safety belts. The taxi had an accident, and they both died in the accident because they didn't have the safety belts, and they were like 80 something, both of them. But the most funny or sort of dark funny part was that when the news came out, John Nash died. The response of lots of computer science people was like, "Oh, he was still alive. I didn't know, because he just disappeared from public and so on." So what I wanted to say is that this game theory is connected to um, yeah. Thank you, people. Yeah, that's the imitation game and the beautiful mind. Exactly, beautiful mind. That's the John Nash one. Recommend. Thank you very much, Renata. Thanks a lot. So the 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 40s and 50s, when the game theory was developed, there was also there was also John von Neumann, which we know like one of the big games in early computer science, and then John Nash, and so this was basically a time of Cold War, right? First the real war, and then the Cold War. So the decision theory, like what to do for even politicians, how to do the foreign policy, was really important, and so that's why people like mathematicians started to study the sort of decision theory, like. There was a big issue with having a nuclear bomb, right? But the nuclear bomb is sort of a symbol. You have a nuclear bomb, but you don't really want to use it, right? Because if the opponent also have the nuclear bomb, this would actually result in basically destroying the world. So um, that the how to strategically use the weaponry in the Cold War where you don't really want to fight another war, but you have to, have some kind of strategic positions. And so that was the origins of the game theory, the motivation, and those people were actually advising politicians, and so some of the results are still very useful when doing some strategic political decision or economical decision. Uh, so to understand the situation, I recommend another movie, and I hope that's the the last movie I'm recommending. Dr. Strangelove. Dr. Strangelove is a very bitter, sarcastic comedy about politics in this nuclear age. Uh, it's directed by Stanley Kubrick, one of the giants, and also it's interesting that Peter Sellers, which you might remember from the Pink Panther series, the original one from the 60s and 70s. He's playing actually couple characters, the mad scientist and other characters there. So Doctor Strangelove is the sort of a bitter comedy that ends in the world destruction, actually, that demonstrates the atmosphere sort of from the 50s, and the atmosphere where the decision theory was developed. So okay, that was some kind of motivation. We'll see that we might have more yet, because I promised Gabriela the funny names. So okay, so how does the von Neumann and Nash game theory started, right? So we want to understand the decision process, and we will model it as a two-player game where we have the agents I and J, Alice and Bob, right? You name it, the usual. And the idea is that we have an environment where the agents have actions. So we have action of agent A and action of agent Alice and Bob. Uh, it's not Alice and Gross. It's Alice and Bob. That's the usual in in many algorithms where you want to describe some kind of communication of two people. You have Alice and Bob. Like A and B agents communicating with each other. So the environment in our example is actually uh, changing in turns, and both agents play, meaning that they produce some kind of action of agent A, action of agent G, and we the environment is telling up the outcome, right? So we usually have the description of those games in the form of a table where we have the I agent here, the J agent here. So here we have the actions of agent I. Here we have the actions of agent J. And for each combination, agent I is taking this action, agent J is taking this action. So here we have the outcome, which usually means that you have some kind of number, like agent I is getting 7 from this combination, agent J is getting 5 from this combination. Right? So we have this this table where all the actions of one of the first agent and on the second agent are described, and then for each combination you have an outcome for agent I and for the agent J, right? So that's the sort of a simple situation how you describe the agents are playing some kind of strategy. So we're talking about a strategy, and the strategy means what you are choosing, right? So the strategy is telling you take the action AI, right? Uh, and this can be the strategy. The notion of strategy is very simple, meaning you are selecting one action out of your finite set of actions. So there's nothing special about the strategy, but the game theory is trying to actually tell you what kind of strategy, if you are an agent, what kind of strategy to choose based on the definition of the game by means of those outcomes, right? Uh, okay, so we can actually I will try to present the definitions of Nash equilibrium, and then we will see we will soon see some example, but bear with me for some more time for the couple of definitions. So the strategy of an agent I is telling which action to choose. We are now only choosing one action at a time, so we're not concerned about, some of you probably know the iterated prisoner's dilemma. We were discussing this on evolutionary algorithms, but this is just a one-time process, right? The agents play against each other and they submit only one action, still called strategy, meaning you choose, you agent I, agent Alice, choose action 1. Agent Bob, choose action 2. And then you look for the possible outcome, right? So the basic notion of this is actually called, yeah, this is worth mentioning. This is called the so-called pure strategies. Pure strategies. Uh, it's a notion from the 50s. What we're meaning, it's deterministic. Deterministic. The strategy, if it's pure, is saying you choose action 7, you choose action 5. That's it. Another possibility why it's actually called pure is that we have something that should be dirty, right? Not pure, the opposite, it's dirty. Well, it's not called dirty, it's called mixed strategy. So we can have a mixed strategy. And the mixed strategy, so the pure strategy is deterministic, saying you choose action 7. The mixed strategy is that we have the actions, and for each action, we have the probability we can choose this strategy. So the mixed strategy would be with probability 0, 1, choose action 1, with probability 0, 9, choose action 2. And that's a mixed strategy, right? So it's not deterministic, it's stochastic, and it's very simple, just setting the probabilities for choosing the strategy. And then the strategy choice in the pure strategies is really just deterministic. Yeah, I choose this one. In a mixed strategy, you sort of toss a coin that's biased according to these probabilities, and then you choose one strategy, right? So we have pure strategies, we have mixed strategies. And now, of course, for the agent, now you consider what strategy to choose, right? So, so the idea is observing the payoff matrix. You're deciding which strategy to choose. So for each strategy you have here, uh, you're saying, okay, if I choose this strategy and the opponent is choosing this strategy, so we are here, what's the outcome for me? That's one, right? If I choose this strategy still and the opponent is choosing this strategy, so the outcome for me is two, right? And now what to take out of it, right? So for your case, selecting a strategy I, you don't know what your opponent is selecting. So what you're trying to do to examine all those possibilities, and then to say, well, uh, how to uh, aggregate those numbers of my outcomes, and what does it mean for me to choose this strategy. So usually what you are doing is that you're considering the worst case scenario, right? The worst case. That's why they call the agent rational agents. The opponent is also rational, so the opponent would be choosing the best strategy for him, which is the worst strategy for you, right? So the opponent will be choosing. Uh, so for example, here, if you consider the agent, your opponent is rational, so maybe the outcome of playing action I is zero, right? Even though you have better alternatives, you can consider that the opponent would be uh, playing the one that's worse for you, right? So so the rationality of the opponent, meaning that uh, you have to consider the sort of worst case scenario by means of the possible outcomes of your strategy, right? Uh, and then for you, so you are trying to select, if you are agent A, the Alice, you are trying to select the best strategy, right? So you go through all those strategies and saying, well, the worst case scenario says zero here. You choose the numbers here, you observe them, and you say, well, this says one, and then well, this says two. So for you, the the best would be to choose this one, right? This strategy that maximizes your outcome, considering the worst possible cases in each row for you, right? The worst possible answers. And so this strategy that provides uh, the best the best outcome is called a dominant strategy for you. Uh, More formally, the strategy is dominant if it provides better or same result than any other strategy of yours against all strategies of your opponent, right? That's the worst case. So you have to consider, this deserves a red. So you have to consider all possible strategies your opponent is playing and sort of consider always the worst case scenario, right? And the dominant strategy is the one that provides you the best outcome considering the all possible moves of your opponent, right? So that's dominant strategy for you. So Alice is observing those outcomes, doing minimum here, and then doing maximum on the minima here. And the maximum is the dominant strategy, right? And then the contribution of Nash was that he says, okay, so in our scenario, you have the agent A, and he's selecting a dominant strategy for him, and then you have agent B, and she's selecting the dominant strategy, and So so this is the dominant strategy as B, and this is the dominant strategy as A for all those agents. And so this pair is called Nash equilibrium. So strategies are called to be in a Nash equilibrium when they are the best against each other, right? So it means that if A plays as A, then the best answer is as B by B, right? And vice versa. If B plays as B, then the best answer is SA, right? So, so the two strategies are the best answer to each other, right? The mutually best answer. So this means that if you consider the interaction, the SA plays as best, achieves the highest outcome. The SB plays as best, achieving the highest outcome. And we call this Nash equilibrium, right? Because it's sort of property of those two strategies. They are mutually the best answer again each other. If you change it to some other, you're lowering your outcome, right? The the problem is that uh, by computing what's the dominant strategy, you still have to consider the worst case scenario, right? And that's where this properties that are sometimes called like well, sometimes sound counterintuitive, like with the prisoner's dilemma, we will see it. So that's where these properties arise, right? Because to be a dominant strategy means to be safe against all possible actions of your opponent, right? Okay, so I guess that this is understandable. Now, the Nash was really like establishing this theory. So he says that that there are some games that have equilibria in pure strategies, right? So we know that we have games in pure strategies that there are equilibria, Nash equilibria. Uh, the main theorem says that every game with finite number of strategies has Nash equilibrium in mixed strategies. So there's always Nash equilibrium in mixed strategies. In pure strategies, there are some not. And so we know that for a game, it's really interesting to study the Nash equilibria either in pure strategies. They are more understandable what we're doing. Sometimes in the mixed strategies, we know for sure that there is one for each problem specified like that. The interesting thing is that this theorem, the Nash theorem, stating about the mixed strategies, this theorem is not constructive. So from the mathematical point of view, we know that uh, every game with finite number of strategies has a Nash equilibrium in mixed strategies, and there's a proof. The proof is not constructive, so for many years we didn't know how difficult it is to find such an equilibria. We didn't have an algorithm to find such an equilibrium. Well, the problem is that it's actually exponential. Uh, so to find if you have m strategies and n agents, it takes m to the power of n. That's the number of strategies you actually have to search for. But we didn't know. But in 2006, there was a class of search algorithms, the so-called total search problems, and it has been proven that this problem of finding a Nash equilibrium falls into the so-called total search problems. They have a special category in complexity theory. It's called PPAD class. So we know that finding the equilibria is PPAD complete. It's sort of difficult to explain what PPAD is class, but it's only slightly, well, to be like very, I mean, don't cite me uh, with some complexity theory people, but it's only slightly tiny bit below NP completeness. So we know that finding the equilibria can be really intractable because it's exponential, basically, right? So the Nash equilibria is very important, and we will see the mixed strategy and pure strategy and some equilibria in some games. Now let's take a small look into the Pareto optimality. And let me ask you a question. Have you heard about the Pareto optimality? Have you heard about the multi-objective optimization? Some people who were attending my evolutionary algorithms, they probably would say yes. Do we have somebody who doesn't know Pareto stuff at all? I figured out it exists. Yeah, yeah. I will try to try to explain it. Mm, Actually, anybody else? It's a confession time. I mean, if somebody wants to come out. You see, Robert already came out, and it's okay. It doesn't hurt. It's a good feedback for me. Okay, everybody else is familiar with Pareto. Well, we don't need any big theory, anyways. But the idea is, well, Pareto was actually a sort of medieval ages Italian mathematician, and you probably know the Pareto rule, that sort of folk economy, folk mathematics rule that 80% of the problem takes 20% of time, and uh, the remaining 20% of the problem take 80% of time. So it's sort of a power law type of thing, like well, be careful, problems can be more complex, and only in little part that's really complex, and so on. So that's sometimes called a Pareto law, or it's a basically it's a definition of power law. But the interesting thing that now is considered is called after Pareto is when you are trying to optimize against multiple criteria. So when you think about it, if we have a function, and we have a function like anything like this, and so let me draw the function like this, and I ask you what's the optimum, what's the maximum value. So we will probably identify this thing, right, as a maximum value, because that's where we have x here, we have y here, and we are looking for maximum, for example. So we can find the maximum and say, well, this is the maximum. Some functions don't have maximum in our interval. If it's bounded, we can say, well, okay, it's here, right? Some functions can have more. This the same. It can be like a camel, like this. So we can have two same optimal values, but it's sort of easy to understand what's the optimal solution, right? Now let's try to switch the picture and imagine that we are trying to maximize two criteria at once. So for each of the points here, we compute their objective one, that would be on the x. So that's one value here, objective one. But we have another objective, and it's here, and it's objective y, right? So we have two objectives, and we are trying to optimize the problem, say maximize, uh, with respect to these two objectives. And how you do it. So you are trying to find out what's the maximum of OX, and also what's the maximum of OY. Right? So now you can think of different solutions, different points, and can you tell which one is optimal? Right? So if I ask you, is this guy optimal? So you say no, probably not, because we have solutions that are better in OX, and we have solutions that are better in OY, right? So then it's sort of obvious that out of those uh, possible candidates, we are identifying these guys, and they are called Pareto front. And they represent sort of optimal solution. Why is that, right? Because we are saying that a solution like this one is dominated by this solution because this solution is better, at least in one objective, right? So this solution is dominated by this solution. This is better. This guy here is not dominated by anything because all the solutions are worse, right? So we have a notion of dominance. It's a nice notion, right? So you have the dominant solutions, or solutions that dominate other solutions. You don't have sort of a generic dominant solution. You always have to dominate somebody to be a dominant solution. So these solutions are dominated, and these solutions are non-dominated. And the set of non-dominated solutions is called a Pareto front. So these are optimal solutions to our problem, maximize OX and OY. It might come as a surprise that for single criteria optimization, optimizing one objective, like the Y in our previous, well, Robert is asking if aren't all solutions in Pareto front also in Nash equilibrium, and well, you will see that it depends on the game. You can have formulations where Nash equilibria and Pareto solutions are the same, but you can also have games where they're totally different. And that's actually a very good question, because the Pareto front is talking about, like, this is the set of solutions that are sort of the optimal for everybody, right? But we don't have the notion of the dominant strategies in the Nash equilibria, where in order to be a a strategy, in order to be Nash equilibria, you are dominating against all possible outcomes of this. So, well, to be more formal, what what we are now considering, the Pareto front is like a general multi-objective optimization. You can have more axes, like 3 objectives and so on, more objectives, but you're always getting sort of Pareto front of solutions. But the notion of dominance is different for Pareto dominance and different for Nash dominance. And in order to understand how these two work together, we will see an example. But in general, what we're saying is that if it's a game of two agents, we are having the agent Alice here, right, and the outcome for agent Alice, the payoffs here for agent Bob here, and we are when we are considering like the scenario where they're playing some kind of game. So this means A is playing some strategy, B is playing some strategy, and this there will be some number here that's the outcome, right? And so we will be looking for the Pareto front. That's one possibility how to look at it, optimizing the outcomes based on the strategies. Or we will be looking at Nash equilibrium, and that can be different. So I will show you some examples where the Nash and Pareto optimality is very different. Okay, so my last remark, it may come as a surprise that we are maximizing 2 objectives or even more objectives, like 100, but always when you're maximizing more than 1 objective, you probably will not end up with one solution saying this is the maximum, this is the optimum, but you will end up with a front of several solutions. And then it's actually, they all are optimal in Pareto sense, and then it's probably up to you to have another criteria which one is better, right? For example, a very simple example, you can imagine that you have different means of transportation and you are considering the time, like how fast it is, and you are considering the cost of the transportation, right? So then you formulate it as a sort of multi-objective decision problem. You're getting these, and then you're saying, okay, so this means I'm getting there in a very long time, but I'm spending a low amount of money, right? This means I'm getting there very fast, but paying a lot for it, right? So, but these all are optimal combinations, but still probably you can say, okay, I can allow like this amount of money, so I choose this out of the Pareto front because this is sort of optimal in terms of money and time for me, right? But all this front is actually a solution to this optimization. Okay, and the last thing, remember we were talking, so we have Nash equilibria, we have Pareto optimality, and we will see that they do not have to be identical. And remember the thing that makes Gabriela laugh, the social welfare. So, and the social welfare is actually the sum of outcomes considering all agents. So in this case, this would be OA and OB, right? And that's it. And so we are considering if these agents together receive some reasonable outcome, right? So Nash, game theoretical equilibria, Pareto optimality, and coming from multi-objective optimization and social welfare, basically trying to assess the performance of the whole system of agents together, right? By summing up the individual the individual outcomes of agents. Okay, so keep in mind those three things, and now let's take a look at some game finally. So I promised the prisoner's dilemma. Uh, Now somebody who's really careful should keep a close watch on me, because I find out that in those cases where you have two players and you have to write two outcomes, I usually make mistakes. So it's some kind of dyslectic type of behavior. It usually demonstrates only in those like left and right Alice and Bob scenarios. So somebody should keep a close watch on what I'm actually writing. Okay, so the idea of Prisoner's Dilemma is that it's one of the iconic games. Well, I mean, the whole game theory. It's not. I mean, it's not a game, right? It's sort of a nerdish notion of a game. So we have two players, and they are playing a game. In case of prisoners, well, it's the two criminals being caught by police, right? So we can call them I don't know, uh, Alice and Bob, right? And so they have been caught doing some common crime together, and then the police is interrogating them, and they basically have two options: either to be a good criminal, a good co-criminal, and cooperate with the accomplice. With so Alice and Bob, they go to do some robbery, and but they promise at the beginning of the night they will never betray each other, and even if the police catches them, that they will not uh, uh, be like a witness for the police. They will still be friends and not revealing something important to the police, because the police. I mean, the police are tricky guys, right? They are uh, offering the criminal, each criminal individually, the possibility to defect, to get better term in jail uh, in exchange for being the witness of the crime and basically putting everything, all the shame, to the accomplice, right? To rat on the accomplice. And so you basically have two options, and you have an option to cooperate, meaning cooperate with your accomplice, or to defect, meaning being the bad guy and tell the police, right? And the same, Bob has also the cooperate and defect options. And so mm, try to use colors. So we have A and B, like this. Okay. So the uh, the idea is that here we will have, right, different numbers spent in years as sort of the outcomes. And before I put concrete numbers, I will try to tell you the general idea. If you think of what numbers you can put there, these numbers uh, are actually called. So you have cooperation and cooperation. So the if you cooperate, you receive the reward for cooperation. If you decide as A to cooperate, and the Bob is defecting you, then you're sort of the sucker one, right? You're the victim now, so you get the sucker's payoff, and Bob is receiving the temptation uh, money, right? If you're in this situation where A defects and B cooperates, it's symmetric, right? So now uh, B is the victim getting the sucker's payoff, and A is getting the temptation money. And then when you both defecting, it's not that good for the police actually, uh, but you have some kind of punishment for the defection. So you both yeah, both receiving the same. So it's a punishment and punishment, right? So we understand this. We have the A and B, and this is the payoffs, right? And uh, in order to be a sort of prisoner's dilemma type of game, we need the inequalities to hold like this. The temptation money should be big, right? That's the temptation to defect your accomplice, right? So the temptation money is big. The reward and punishment. So reward is for cooperation and punishment is for defection. So the reward for cooperation should be bigger than the punishment for defection. So this actually tells us we want to stimulate the cooperation of agents, right? The reward for cooperation is bigger than the punishment for defection. And then the sucker's payoff, yeah, that's the bad luck, this one, right? And this temptation, it's the biggest money in the game. So for example, one particular uh, numbers for this that makes sense can be that the if you cooperate and the so okay, I'll write it down. So we have three. Oh, it will be better to be, yeah, it's better to be the the numbers. So I will do it like this. So uh, cooperation getting three, suckers payoff uh, zero, uh, de- punishment for detection 4, and the P is 1. P is 1, 4 is here, 3. Oh, no, no. Sorry. It should be green. 1, 0, 4, 3. Right? Yeah. So that's the situation now. Take a look at the numbers, right? So if both cooperate, the police can actually punish, get them some 3 years in prison, but that's it. The the important thing is that the one that def- defects is getting the lots of money, and the one so that's this situation, right? Defection getting lots of money, and then the mutual defection not worth it, right? So now when we are talking about what to play, right? So when you are deciding what to play, uh, you are considering what your strategy should be. So for example, imagine you're A, and you're saying, okay, what should I play? So imagine I will cooperate, then in case D betrays me, I'm getting 0, right? So imagine I'm defecting. In case D betrays me, I'm getting 1. And I'm getting more for the cooperation part. But this is important, right? So for me, as an agent A, I will defect, right? Do we understand why I've chosen defect? Because when I cooperate, uh, I can get 3 if I'm lucky, but the worst case scenario is I'm getting 0, right? If I decide to defect, I can get 4 if I'm lucky, but the worst case scenario is 1. So so the 1 is important. I'm choosing D, right? And actually it's symmetric. So the same goes from here, right? If I'm here, I cooperate and so I'm getting 3, but when A is defecting, I'm getting 0. So if I defect, I can get 4 if I'm lucky, but I can get 1 in any case, right? So as B, I'm choosing D as well. These are Nash dominant strategies. And so this actually, the DD strategy, DD is Nash equilibrium. So the DD strategy is Nash equilibrium. What does it say? Well, it says, well, you are betraying your partner, right? So you're playing the strategy that says betray your partner. Why is that? Because if you decide to cooperate and not play uh, the defect, then there is a slight chance that, or big chance, that your partner is defecting, right? So then you're much worse. Well, you're worse than if you play the D. If you play the D, you have 1 for sure, right? So uh, that's the idea, that the DD, this strategy is Nash equilibrium. On the other hand, uh, if you're thinking, what is the uh, Pareto optimal solution? Well, the Pareto optimal solution is the one where you're getting non-dominant solutions in terms of those values, right? So actually, uh, if you think of it, you have 3, 3 and 1, 1, right? So consider those to be like coordinates. You have 4, that's the biggest. You have 4 here, that's the biggest. So the Pareto optimality, the Pareto front for this is actually all these 3, which are CC, CD, and DC. They are Pareto optimal. Huh? So this is an example where the Nash equilibrium is not Pareto optimal. Actually, all other 3 solutions are Pareto optimal. The Nash equilibrium is not Pareto optimal, right? So to play safe, you need Nash equilibrium. That's the DD combination of strategies. That's the only one that's not Pareto optimal. And to conclude our analysis, what's the social welfare? What's the best social welfare? Well, that's the biggest sum, right? So we're summing 1 and 1 is 2. That's definitely not 4 and 0 and 4 and 0. That's 4. But we have here the cooperation tells us 3 plus 3, that's 6. So the CC is the best in terms of social welfare, right? So together, this is the best. So actually, prisoner's dilemma, not iterated, is an interesting game where the payoffs were set up in a way that they support cooperation. So we see that the cooperation is best in terms of social welfare. We're getting the sum of these outcomes. This is 6, this is 4, this is 4, this is 2, right? So the sum of the outcomes for the CC, the cooperation, is the best, is the biggest. On the other hand, when you play this according to the game theory, you have to choose the defect, because the notion of the algorithm is strict, and it requires you to choose the strategy that's safe against all opponents' possible strategies. So if you want to play safe, you're actually choosing suboptimal strategy from the point of view of social welfare, and also from the point of view of Pareto optimality. But that's because you are not sure that Alice will cooperate with Bob. If you can trust Alice, then the CC would be great, right? But the temptation payoff is too big. So to be sure, you are getting this some kind of dilemma, right? Well, well, that's I think interesting, Robert, and I hope that now you understand that the definition of Nash equilibrium is more about playing safe against all possibilities. The Pareto and social welfare is like trying to optimize the outcome if possible. And so the prisoner's dilemma is interesting in a way, because it shows you the example of a game where the Nash equilibrium is very different from the social welfare optimum, and also different from the Pareto optimal solutions, right? So this is why it's so interesting, because we see that the cooperation, although it is somehow supported by the cooperation reward, uh, is actually not the optimal choice from the point of view of game theory. And it also tells you, are we rational? Like, I mean, are we rational agents if we're deciding? Probably not really, right? That's the point of friendship or love, is actually to be irrational. So I think that humans tend to be irrational agents, not rational agents, which might be good, because to trust somebody, it's I think it's a good thing. But from the point of view of game theory, it's irrational. Um, and also, which I would like to tell you in the end, there is the situation changes when you iterate the problem. So, but I will tell you. I want to show you examples of some other games that have different properties. So you should understand that the game theory actually is a sort of a general area, and depending on your definition of a game by the matrix of payoffs, you're getting different games. So, for example, let's take a look at another game. Uh, this game is sometimes called coordination game, because it should be a definition of a game. The payoffs should be defined in a way that they support coordination. So coordination mean choosing the same action, right? Uh, Strangely enough, the original the original name is actually Battle of Sexes, and this is a bit of a sensitive area. The Battle of Sexes, it's because it was considered to be uh, male and female agents playing against each other, and so let me see. And so you have they're deciding what to do tonight, and you have two options: either to go to ballet or to see a boxing match, a fight. It's not that they're fighting together, but they go to see the fight. And so that's the ballet and fight are the options where to go tonight. And this is the rewards. So the rewards are, if they choose ballet, it's 1-2. If they choose ballet fight, it's 0-0. If they choose fight and ballet, it's 0-0. And if they choose fight, then it's 2-1. So now the battle of sexes now is considered in some circles to be sort of a sexist name. I don't know why. I mean, some of you will probably say that we don't even know who's Alice and who's Bob, right? Who's male and who's female. So what are the options? If we have ballet, then so probably it can be the traditional definition would be Bob here and Alice here, but that's sort of stereotypical. Yeah, so we can consider that actually Bob loves ballet and Alice is into kickboxing or something. So the funny thing is the Battle of Sexes have the acronym of BOS, and now the politically correct name for this is Bach or Stravinsky. So yeah, to keep the acronym, but to decision is pretty much the same, right? So it's Bach or Stravinsky. It's kind of interesting. It's obviously discriminates the tone deaf people. It strongly discriminates non-intellectuals who do not go to uh, classical music. Nevertheless, it's still BOS. So, what to take from the outcomes? If you take a look at it, why this supports coordination? Well, because if you see the outcomes, when every time when they choose uh, different versions, so the FB and BF are getting 0-0, so they're both unhappy. So for them the motivation is definitely to choose to do things together, to go either ballet, both to ballet, or to both go to fight, and both of these are better, and they are, each of them is more satisfied, right? Each of them, because for choosing different options, excuse me, for ending up in two different places, they get 0 both, so they're unhappy. So I mean, imagine Bob does not like ballet that much, but he rather chooses to go to ballet because the outcome is 1, and the outcome for Alice and ballet is 2, right? So Alice is more happy at ballet. The same is symmetric. Bob is more happy at fight, but still Alice is kind of happy there as well because she is with Bob, right? So So this is a coordination game because it forces uh, the uh, the players to choose the same uh, the same option, right? So obviously, what we know is that the Nash equilibrium, uh, the Nash equilibrium is the BB and FF. These are Nash equilibrium. Are there also um, Pareto optimal? Yes, they are, because they're sort of the corners, right? So what we're having, the situation is that we're having the F FB and BF are sort of 0, 0, and then the B BB is 1, 2. So this is BB, and the FF is 2, 1, right? So this is FF. So yeah, so BB and FF are Pareto optimal, right? The FB and BF are dominated by BB and FF. So Nash is BB and FF. Pareto optimal is also BBFF. And consider the social welfare. We're summing them, right? So this is 0, 0, 3, 3. So wow, even social welfare is uh, BB and FF. So this coordination game has the same Nash equilibrium, the same Pareto optimal things, and all these two strategies, and they are also the social welfare optimal strategies. So this is very different from the situation with prisoner's dilemma. Uh, one more joke. Well, it's not a joke. It's an interesting thing. If you want to compute the Nash equilibrium in the so-called mixed strategies, which meaning that you have the probabilities of um, of the uh, of the actions. So you end up for Bob for Bob, you have uh, the strategy, the mixed strategy would say that you're taking 1/3 probability of taking ballet and 2/3 probability of taking the fight. And for Alice, it's vice versa. Alice is taking 2/3 for the ballet and 30% or of choosing the the fight. So this can be computed, proven to be a Nash equilibrium in mixed strategies. So they both selecting the one they're liking better 2 times more often than the other one, which sort of is understandable considering those. But the interesting thing is that if you compute the outcome from the uh, from the mixed strategy for all of them, the outcome for both of them will be 2/3. So by playing the pure strategy, playing the BB, Bob gets 1 and Alice gets 2. By playing the mixed strategy, that usually is better because you can fine tune the probabilities and mixing them together, you're actually getting lower, even the Bob gets lower, right? So this is an interesting case where the mixed Nash equilibrium in mixed strategies, the optimal mixed strategy is actually providing worse results than the pure strategies. Sometimes it's not the case. One more example that's not in the slides, but I kind of like it. Just a small one. When you consider the child game of scissors, rock, and paper, we all know, right? So you got the scissors, uh, paper, and rock, and the same here. We have rock here, paper, and scissors. And so, what's the how does it look like? Well, the rock and scissors. So your rock is getting one for paper and scissors. Paper is getting -1. Rock and rock is 0. Uh, paper paper is 0, and scissors is 0. Oh. And so the scissors beat the paper, so you're getting uh, -1 and 1. You're getting 1 and -1. The scissors beating the paper, and the scissors beating the paper, and the rock beating the scissors, and the rock wrapping the paper. No, paper wrapping the rock. Something like that. So that's the rock, scissors, and paper. And the interesting situation here is that what's the optimal strategy, right? So the Nash equilibria in pure strategies does not exist. In mixed strategies, there is Nash equilibrium, and it's the simple playing 1/3 scissors, 1/3 rock, and 1/3 paper, and that's the Nash equilibria, and that's the optimal strategy in terms of Nash equilibria. So this the children's game of rock, paper, and scissors is an example where Nash equilibrium in pure strategies does not exist, and it exists in uh, only in mixed, where you do the probabilities. Well, there is also the so-called the Battle of Sexes was the coordination game because it supports coordination. There are also the anti-coordination game where the payoffs are very different, and so they are supporting the to play different strategies. One of those is called the chicken game. Chicken does not mean real chicken here, but a slang for a coward, and it's been inspired by what they say teenagers were doing in United States with cars, the sort of duels where they were driving against each other till the very last moment, and then you could either chicken, meaning you turn and avoid the collision, or you were pretending or keeping the dare solution, meaning I keep driving, right? And the idea for this type of game is that, of course, if you're doing the duel and you're doing the chicken and the opponent is doing the dare, you're sort of in shame, right? So you have some kind of shame factor. You're losing. The outcome for you is bad when you're the chicken, and the outcome for the hero who chooses dare is big. The point is that the actual conflict, the if you actually do the car crash, the risk of this, the cost of this is so big that it never pays off, right? So if we consider just very quickly the last 2 minutes, if we consider the chicken and dare, so you have the to be the chicken, to be the coward, or to do the fight, the dare, and so you have 5-5 if you both chicken. You have 0-0 if you both there. In some situations, you even have like -1000 because a crash is like something deadly, right? And this is exactly the type of game the politicians were playing, considering using starting a war using the nuclear weapon, right? So if you're both chicken, well, nothing special, okay. If you are chicken and your opponent is there, that's the bad thing. You're getting only one, and the opponent gets a lot. If you're both there, meaning that's the explosion. So the 0-0 is very optimistic formulation. The interesting thing is that Nash equilibrium in pure strategies is the if you both play the different strategies. So the CD and DC is Nash equilibrium, and it's also the social welfare, right? Because it's 7 versus no. The social welfare is CC 5-5. CC is social welfare. So to not go into conflict is the best. Uh, to choose different strategies is the Nash equilibrium, and the depending on how big this term is, to actually do the conflict means you're losing both in the fight. So this is called the chicken game or chicken dare, chicken dare, and sometimes in evolutionary biology they know this type of games as the so-called hawk and dove scenarios, where the hawks are considered the fighters and the doves are considered the ones they are trying to avoid the conflict and do the chicken. Funny thing is that it's more like a folk tale metaphor, because the biologists, the real biologists, like the ornithologists, they say that it's totally inappropriate, that actually doves are uh, crazy beasts fighting a lot, and hawks are sort of noble predators but helping their own kin. So I guess time is running out. So we will see in the next lecture how these theories apply to schemes of voting. But what we've seen today is that the game theory and uh, uh, multi-objective optimality and the social welfare are three criteria that we can apply for situations, and they can have very different results based on the specification of the environment of the game, because today we were using only like the games from the game theory. So depending on the formulation of a game, you can get very different situations supporting cooperation, uh, supporting competition, and sometimes anti-intuitive results about Nash equilibria versus social welfare and Pareto optimality. I promised to tell you something about the iterated prisoner's dilemma, so that'll be next week, the first 5 minutes about the iterated prisoner's dilemma. That's it. Thanks a lot, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.